What's going on, my people? You're listening to The Score, an urban music education podcast hosted by Eric and Justin, where we discuss tips and strategies on how to become a more effective, compassionate, and culturally responsive music educator. What's going on, my people? This is Eric.
And this is Justin.
And we're your hosts for
The Score.
Welcome to episode 100, 4 years of reflection, of service.
Wow.
From Music Ed Podcasting. What's up, Justin? How's it going, bro?
I'm excited, man. We are we doing something a little bit different, huh?
Just a little bit. We got fire back there, and some great things are happening, man. But man, I woke up in gratitude this morning, bro.
Yeah, for sure.
A lot of it has to do with this podcast, and mostly with you.
Man, I appreciate it.
Those kind of moments of I look back this morning, man, when I was driving here, 2018, man, we were sitting in our office at Heights High School in Houston ISD.
Yeah.
And we were having people tell us, why don't y'all do a podcast?
Right. And we were just like, podcast? Who's going to listen to a Latino guy and a black guy talking about?
And from an inner city school district.
Not a real thing.
Yeah. That, a lot of that was what we had perceived as people wouldn't listen to us. Folks would not pay attention to us, or they probably didn't even consider our topics of discussion worthy of listening to. So, man, I woke up this morning just thinking, wow, it's been 4 years.
Yeah, I think for me, the time has really flown by. And to be perfectly honest, all of the things that we've done, I'm still in this place of amazement because I really don't believe, like, even though we're here, we got the fire, I don't think in my wildest dreams that I thought this was going to happen. Did I think we would have some success and be able to help some people? Yes. Did I think we would turn it into this engaging aspect of our lives from our friendship and brotherhood that we've been able to pour into other people? I didn't, but I'm glad and I'm happy. I'm excited about our 100th episode, and I'm excited to see what we're going to do for the next 100 episodes. So as am I.
And so I wanted to actually ask you, man.
Yeah.
Looking back at when we recorded the first episode, back on 4141 North Freeway.
Yeah.
And my pop's old office that no longer exists. But did you think for 1 second that we would be able to do the things that we've been able to do through this podcast?
I didn't, to be perfectly honest. I think I would be lying if I sat here talking to you and saying, oh yeah, I knew this was, I think the apex of what we were doing and what we do now was TMEA.
Yeah.
If we can get to TMEA and speak life into other music educators, give them our expertise in the inner city, in the different type of environments that we lived in, I thought it was a win. Now, after TMEA happening literally within us getting it started, then the door was like, well, what's possible?
Yeah.
And so to go from there, to be in Nashville, to go to Indianapolis, to go to all these different places, to meet all of these different people, it's just a reminder to us, the same thing we were telling our kids. You just got to show up and do the work. Like, you got to show up to this band hall. You got to show up to this practice field and practice, do the work, engage, be committed. And whatever happens is going to happen. But we're not waiting on things to happen. We're not thinking about, well, what if we get to go to area? Or what if we get to do this? We're just going to do the work.
Wow.
Yeah.
We're not waiting. I think that's one thing that we've gotten some of our listeners to come back to us and say, when y'all told me don't wait, create, I submitted for a presentation at TMEA. I went ahead and submitted that book proposal.
Yeah.
And so I know there's a lot of folks that felt like us in 2018, assuming folks aren't going to listen to us.
Yeah.
Folks won't pay attention to us, or whatever I need to bring to the table is not worthy of being at the table.
Yeah.
And the thing that I've recognized through that is that there's space. Although it's an overused phrase, there's plenty of space at the table. And it's true, though. It really is. Because even though we're navigating some things right now and still continue to do so, where folks are like, well, what do they have to say? Who are they? What do they bring to the table? And so our listeners who are advocating for us in some different spaces and different states of like, no, these guys are worthy of coming to present for us.
Right.
And so the people above them sometimes haven't heard of the Score podcast, or haven't heard of you and I. And so sometimes they go and click and start hitting record, and then they realize like, oh, hey, these guys are saying some things that I agree with, And And I think that was for me, because you and I have, if you go back and look at our catalog, there have been some stints, some moments of not recording.
Right.
I can think of
life is
last
happening.
year around this time, we hit record at the beginning of marching season, and then we dropped an episode at the end of marching season.
And Bandtober is a real thing.
And that was Falltober, Sure. And so I look at those moments, man, and I question myself as to, will people keep listening to us?
Right.
And because we took such a long break in some of those stints, because life called, family called, whether my daughter was born, your kids being born, things happening in there that we honored and respected the fact that it was like, no, you know what? This is a little bit more important.
For sure.
But when we picked back up,
people were locked in.
Man, we picked back up.
And I think, honestly, I think we were able to have that, because I think people ask us all the time, man, you guys, how did y'all do what you did? There were times where we would get an episode and then there may be some time. And I think we try to live out and be intentional via the internet and via this podcast, what we did in our classroom, which is build relationship. And I think if we build it, if we are invested in building relationships from an authentic format, people understand life happens. So when our kids come in our class and you hold a kid accountable for why they weren't at rehearsal or why they haven't turned in their playing assignment or why they weren't prepared for jazz rehearsal, that conversation was hard, but because there was relationship there, you understood the story. And they said, well, Mr. Jimenez, I had some things happening on the back end. Okay, cool. We got to talk about that. You could have told me that up front. Hey, here's some time to go get that stuff done. Hey, can you be on time to my next rehearsal? We got a big engagement coming up. And I think what we were able to do just through happenstance, we're going to go hard at this. We're going to give you everything we have, but we also have life. And we're not doing this for product in a sense. We're doing this as a tool to help you.
Yeah.
So I think people were able to hear, and they developed. How many times have we showed up somewhere and people walked up to us like they'd known us their whole life?
Yeah.
It was just, we're just doing life with people, man.
I think we need more of that.
Yeah.
This morning, for whatever reason, and I know the reason, I was listening to a sermon this morning, and not just because I was coming to see you, but I was listening to a sermon this morning, man, not to get too religious, but the story on there, I transformed some of the words and I made it applicable to what we do. The ego sees ensembles, the heart sees people.
That's good.
I was like,
that's good.
Man, bro, we came out the door at Prairie View trying to prove our worth. Saying, we're competent music educators. We deserve to be here to serve this specific population, because we had a goal in mind to go back and serve that demographic. But we also, at that time, were leading with ego. Yeah. Because we wanted to prove our worth. And somewhere in there, we always got drawn back to, hey, that's a human being. Right. That's a child. Right. That's a kid that's going through something right now that we need to pause, because this ensemble work, this whatever we're trying to shove down their throat about this, I need you to match energy with your neighbor. They're care about that. And so the minute I can think of moments and days that you and I completely stopped rehearsal and it's like, let's talk. Yeah, what's going on? Let's redirect this energy. Yeah. We're not going to be productive. Yeah. So hearing that, I think this podcast is exactly what you said. When we meet people and folks that have met us in person, they say that. They're like, nah, man, y'all are cool people, man. Y'all, that y'all kept me laughing during the pandemic. And so I sit back just kind of like, who am I? Every time you and I link up, like, bro, who are we? Traveling and doing these things, because I know we're passing on. We're giving what our directors, in some way, form, or fashion, our educators, our mentors have shown us, have given us this guidance of like, and if you treat the person right, they're gonna treat you right. Yeah, I think what we've done, when I look back on this time where we've done the podcast and us working together, the word we talk about in band is sacrifice. But I think we've changed the way we've defined it. Before, it was, you got to sacrifice your time. You got to sacrifice all of who you are to be a part of this ensemble. You put this uniform on, all of the hoorah. And I think for us, we had to say, we got to shift the culture by not sacrificing people. Like, if we got to sacrifice the sake of this band, and not to the detriment of the kids, and not that we're not being competitive and being of a high standard, but there are some things that is a taboo in the band world that you don't sacrifice practice time. You don't sacrifice ensemble time. You don't sacrifice class time to deal with life issues.
But you and me were just like, if we don't, it's ultimately going to sacrifice what we're doing.
Yeah.
And I think the heart of the score is we are not trying to tear down the infrastructure. We're just saying, how can we reframe it? How can we reset it that we still get quality ensembles? We still get competitive bands, entertaining groups. Kids are still thriving off of this love of being in this community with other musicians. But that person on the bandstand, that person that yells during practice, actually has a desire to see me be great. Whether we make it to area, whether we make it to prelims or make it to final, whatever, whether I make the region band or if I come in last chair in the jazz audition, this person is inspiring me to care for people and not just the process that they're a part of. You know what I'm saying?
I do. Because I want to give a shout out to Dr. Tim.
Yeah.
If you don't know, I get to serve under his tutelage at Consumer. And I consistently get kind of these reminders like, hey, it's about the relationship. it's about the folks. And I'm just like, thank you. Because I need to hear that sometimes. Right. Even though that's who I am. That's my entire being.
For sure.
I love to connect with folks. I love to break bread with folks. Right. Those are moments that, and I'm guilty of this. Like I don't take enough pictures to document.
Because you're living in the moment.
I really am. And I get in trouble sometimes, that I don't take enough better pictures of my wife and my kids. But man, it's because it's true. I choose to completely be immersed in the conversation, to absorb what's happening. As a person who speaks a lot, to listen twice as much as I speak. And so I want to do better at documenting some of these interactions, but I also want to live in the moment. So it's kind of like one of those give and take because I can think of so many in these 100 episodes, man, of folks who had given us their time, their efforts, their knowledge as guests that and I would speak for you as well, that we're better for them, man.
Yeah, for sure.
That, when people assume, and we would say this time and time again on the podcast, like we learned
a lot.
Like we interviewed you, but we just absorb a lot of information. So that leads me to my next question, man. What are your thoughts on some of the folks that we've brought onto the table and been able to give them the podcast to share the great things that happen in their neck of the woods, if you will?
Man, I think, and this is going to be me being a little biased, just to say this person. As an African-American, percussionist, having a chance to bring on Dr. Lawhorn, who means a lot to you and me, just on the strength of he was just an example of what we were trying to be during our matriculation, but also to see the heights that he's gotten to, coming from Prairie View, going into his master's, into his doctorate, being in high positions within PASIC, being a Vic, like doing all of the things, if we just be frank, doing all of the things that people that don't look like you and me do. It's a norm in those places, and it's not a knock. But to have a person like that within not only arm's reach, but like we can call him, to him to come on that show and to tell his story, and that his story helped him get to where he is, man, I think that was just life-changing for me, because although I wasn't going in that sector, here we are as, music ed podcasters, talking, educating, giving information. And just to be perfectly honest, you would think that we went to a Power 5 PWI. And it's not a knock to those schools, right? But our foundation, our genesis was at Prairie View. And so it's another statement from this podcast that says your background and where you're thriving and where you are built has a special place into getting you to your destination. So to me, it reaffirmed that what we're doing has purpose and it has destiny, and it's not predicated on who do we study under. It's not predicated on what wind ensemble we were in. It's not predicated on what private lesson teacher we study with. You know what I'm saying? So I think that was a culmination throughout all of the different guests that we've had as a sign of like, man, you just got to do what you know how to do where you are, and it's all a part of getting you to where you need to be.
So you made me think of one of our mentors, Dr. John Cornelius, who just celebrated a birthday not too long ago. And I got to stop by and just say hi to him. And I didn't even know it was his birthday the day I stopped by.
Wow.
And we talked for a good 20, 30 minutes. And he's like, this was a great birthday gift, Eric. I was like, when's your birthday? He's like, today. And I was like, oh, well, give me a hug, man. Because I can still sit there and almost feel like an undergrad again. And when you said something right now, he said a phrase to me after my freshman year at Prairie View. He said, Eric, it's not about where you're at. what you do while you're there.
I heard that same phrase, man.
And it's so true, because we can think of Crunchy, Dr. Lawhorn, as somebody who has gone to different universities, different settings, and created a quality product, created a name, and enhanced his impact. And I think that's one thing that, for me, the mission of this podcast and creating this platform was truly that, is kind of like, we're providing a voice. We're amplifying your voice. We're giving the opportunity where at times you may have not been present at some of these conferences, or folks that look like you, or the students that you serve are not necessarily represented in the performing ensembles at these conferences. So when you look and you're like, well, you start questioning yourself, am I doing something wrong? You know, well, I don't have that. I don't do that. You know, and so this is what we're encouraging folks, and finding out, hey, there are different metrics of success, and being able to share those anecdotes and success stories from different colleagues throughout the country is what really helped me kind of redetermine and restructure even what I consider success in the band hall, in my classroom. And it started becoming more about the impact we're making, and using different metrics of success versus programmatic success. And in doing so, when we kind of shifted our focus with that, I know for a fact that we started into being better.
Oh yeah.
You and I started being better, and we started being healthier. You know, we focused on things that the person and the individual in front of us, that when we were on the bandstand or the podium, or outside on the tower, and we're saying gush and go, we had folks not questioning that. It's like, we got a mission, we got a goal to achieve. And it really helps me know that there's more. Like when I see other podcasts pop up that are sharing adjacent messages, or look like us, or come from marginalized communities, I don't feel any type of way of saying, man, they shouldn't be in this space. I'm thinking to myself, yes, the more the merrier. And one thing that I want to shout out to Jesse Cannon, man, that his article, Lift As We Climb, and also his podcast episode with us, I'm kind of getting that reminder now. And given the opportunities that you and I are getting, in the event that we're not available, man, what do?
Pass the baton.
We pass the baton.
Yeah, man.
And that's here's the thing that I'm just gonna ask folks to do more of that.
Yeah.
We are worthy of, like, instead of just saying no, there's somebody else that you've seen has done an outstanding job and is deserving of being on that space. So I want to shout out to him, man. Is that he's given me that kind of motivation, that every opportunity that we get, it's like, hey, I can't do it, but here's somebody that can. Even if it's locally, or throughout just our podcast listener list.
Yeah, I think when you say pass the baton, I think that's important to where we are, not only in our podcast, but in our lives, right? We are, if you don't know, right, we are no longer locked into an ISD. We have been blessed to kind of venture out. And I think when we say pass the baton, it would be selfish of us to think that the tutelage that we have developed and learned is the only thing out there. We're no longer in those places. And we know, you and I both know, that the music world, the band world, it's a ever-changing thing.
For sure.
And so what worked a few years ago, what worked during our heyday may not work now. And what we want to do is give people principles. We want to give them concepts, but we also want to make sure that we speak to the context of where we are right now. So if our platform now becomes the spot to highlight people that are the Erics and Justins of their areas, or the Jesse Cannons, or the Dr. Crunchies, or Dr. Lawhorns,
shout out to Crunchy,
then we want to be that. We want to be that. We don't want to feel like we have this autonomy over all things band in the inner city and Title I and Black and brown spaces. We're just a voice of many voices. And so as we hit the 100th episode and we're just looking back and thinking, I want everybody to know that if you're tapped in here and you are into our content and you're listening to us, man, there's a space for you
definitely
to be a part of what we're doing to help not only the people in your area, but in the world. Because that's what we're trying to do. Like, at the end of the day, we're just trying to be a voice to help the Eric that's in somebody's band hall and somebody's orchestra choir, or the Justin that's in somebody's band hall, that's in somebody's jazz program, or whatever the case may be. And I think that's just a prime example of what we try to do intentionally and authentically.
In rotation, folks. All right, Justin. So just the last episode, I dropped Garin Leon and talked about his country influence and the twang that he's been presenting. To my surprise, he just dropped a country song in English, man. So I'm gonna drop him again because I just said that his sound is influenced by that genre. And on TikTok, man, he's getting a whole bunch of comments saying he deserves to be in this genre, deserves to be in this space. I don't know, man. I kind of go on these little binges sometimes of experiences of like going to Nashville. I've been jamming quite a bit of country recently by Latino artists that are in this space, that have been in this space, but at times we're not recognized as contributors and folks who consume this genre. So Karim Leon, man, I want to give him a shout out again. Big fan of his work and hope to meet him one day, man. Justin, what you got?
So, I go through these nostalgic moments, and at my church right now, I'm a part of the worship creative team. So I just kind of help with song selection and programming of music. And so when you're in church, everybody's always trying to get back to the nostalgia of choirs. We got a lot of worship teams and worship bands, but choirs is not a thing anymore. So I just been going on a deep dive, but I really liked what Kanye West did on his interpretation of what the choir is by taking, hip hop and R&B songs and rephrasing them with a biblical, kind of notion. So I've been listening to the Sunday Service album, but specifically Rain, which is a SWV song, but they switched. And what I really love about it is not only just the voicing, but also the way that they did the music, right? There's no drummer on this album. It's just like 6 to 7 percussionists playing all of these different drums. And if you listen to it, you think that there's a drummer there, but when you watch the videos on YouTube, it's a bass player, it's an organist, a keyboardist, a rhythm guitar, and then you got 7-8 percussionists on all different instruments just grooving together. So Rain, Sunday Service Choir, the whole album is crazy, but that one is on replay right now.
Nice. All right, we're back. So Justin, 4 years of service. And I know when we started this thing off, we didn't know we would be here.
No.
So where do you think we'll go next? What are some ideas that you have for the podcast and for us included? And just what's next for us?
Man, I think the sky's the limit. I think obviously we would love to continue to go around and not just speak to different, conventions and organizations, but actually go around and really speak life into classrooms. Like I would love to be able to go to a state, to a city that's similar to where we've taught and just spend a day with some teachers, man. And whether we get a chance to meet their students, but just spend time in their classroom and say, man, this is really cool how you're doing this. Maybe think about adding this. Hey, I love that you program this music, but think about maybe doing this. Here's some ideas you could do for your popular music ensemble and just talking about what the next wave of music education looks like. I also think it's going to be interesting for us to see what this future of technology look like in the video format. And shout out to Mr. Ryan Cliff, my former director of bands, colleague, good friend. He's been telling us we need to have a call-in line.
Yes, he has.
Right. And we want to communicate with all of the people that follow us. So we're really looking into how do we create a show? How do we create content where people have access to call in with questions, with comments, and just wanting to talk talk shop. So I think this small taste of what's to come is just a fire, if you will, fire towards what's next.
I agree. I think that's long overdue, man. Franklin Willis, also a former guest, good friend of ours, just texted me last week and was like, hey, have y'all considered a call-in option? And so both Ryan and Franklin, yes, we have. And now that we're in different spaces and times in our lives, that allows a little bit more flexibility and more just opportunity to record some of those things. I think that's what's needed. What's next? I myself would love to continue to find some of these teachers that, one, are introverts. Shout out to our friend Aaron Stabell for his episode. And that will say like, no, I don't need to present, or I don't need to share what I'm doing. And then folks will come and tell us like, have you seen their work? Like it's amazing. It's mind blowing. Like you got to go watch it because some of the better teachers that I've had won't necessarily have to like, I don't need to do all of that. So sometimes I think it's upon us and we take on that charge to say, no, you need to get on this podcast. You need to share what's going on with you. And so if you know folks, I would love for you to send us and say, hey, here's some ideas, here's some options. I know a so-and-so, because it's one thing whenever, and just to be quite honest and be frank, in this setting, you can get folks to say, here's my resume, here's what I've done, I deserve to be on your podcast. That's one thing, but I think it's a lot more telling when somebody else
for sure
nominates you. And so we've had a lot of those interactions, and then we've just been blessed sometimes to be in the same space as some folks, and we go check them out, and I'm like, oh yeah,
we got to get them on.
They're the truth, you know. So for me, I really want to find ways to help, even MEA conferences. What you said was a great idea, and you just exemplified and modeled something that I want others to take away. You said if we go and work with teachers or a district that might model demographically the setting that we've served, you said something key. You first said something they did well. And should you consider this? I think when we bring in clinicians or we bring in folks to consult, it's automatically what's going wrong. What's missing? What's all of this? When there's probably an overwhelming sense of what's really good. Well, guess what? Us as educators, we do that to our students. We ended up like, okay, you missed that B flat on measure 4, and then you missed this pitch on this, and the length of this note was that. That might have been 10% of what they did wrong. Where it's still overwhelmingly good. So I mean, I catch those things. So you just said it, and I want more folks to do that. Our profession needs more of that, man. Whether you start incorporating informal music learning practices or just different ways that are approaching a genre. I don't know. I'm asking for a little bit more innovation. I think that's key and needed. Maybe long overdue. You know, and I think give ourselves permission to just be risk takers, to step outside the box, to program a piece that I might have never done before, or let me jump into this genre, let me dip my toe, and just like, I don't know, be a risk taker.
I'm interested in understanding, or not understanding, but I'm interested in, are those that are in the profession still realizing that the profession is changing in front of us, right? That the kids that are coming, the kids that are in elementary, that are in pre-K, that are in 5th grade, these are not kids that are just exposed to music in the sense of like, oh, I want to be in band, right? I saw a clip from the Justice League is a popular hip hop production crew. And they made, I mean, Rick Ross, Jay-Z, anybody you can think of. But one of those members of the production crew, he's a Afro-Latin of descent. And his dad is like a Cuban percussionist. Right. And so they went to a school and they had this seminar where he was programming music, chopping up samples and playing drum patterns on a drum machine. And his dad brought all this authentic percussion and was playing the stuff from records that he did when he created music. But that was a picture of where music is, that his dad was playing on all these Cuban, Afro-Latin kind of things. But his son took what he heard growing up, saw his dad, a professional musician in Cuba. They come over to the States and he gets an MPC, a keyboard and records. And he's chopping records, taking chords and playing drum patterns. And I want our podcast to be the forerunner in letting these future music educators, band directors, even in the state of Texas, how you do it in the next 10 years is going to be very important.
Wow.
It's going to be very important because we were just guinea pigs of that. Like there was no space for you to DJ at school. There was no space for me to create my beats and write songs.
I was in my computer room when we used to have an isolated room just for the computer.
That's what I'm saying.
Figuring out Audacity, downloading illegally off of Napster and LimeWire, you know, man, because I think that's essentially what I was doing. You know what I mean? Where I was sampling like cumbia and putting hip hop over it and trying to be like Chopaholics DJs here back in the day of Party 104.9. You know, like, and so I think of like 2 episodes I dropped, the Lo-Fi, the Palma Sur out in Mexico, this Mexican American producer. And he's exactly kind of doing that. It's taking these nostalgic sounds and making them his, making them current. And I think that the simple thing is just give ourselves permission, give ourselves space. Where so many folks now, it's like you don't have to be either or. You have band heads or band kids that did the drum corps thing that go and even teach drum corps, but they're like, for example, the son of Bob Medina out in Magnolia is the friend of ours. His son's out in Nashville, you know, on drums, gigging, doing his thing, producing and music making. But he was a band kid. He was on a drumline battery, you know? And I think, I know if you and I had a little bit more space, we were just folks that kind of did it. We didn't need it.
But
there's kids And still students in our programs are like, well, I have an interest in requinto.
Right.
You know, like this guitar is different. I know what it sounds like. I kind of teach myself. So I've seen videos like at Umbola is Mrs. Martinez, the mariachi director out there, that just gives space for these students to jam. Daisy Zambrano, just talked to her a couple weeks ago. Amazing. She's told me she just started a conjunto, a norteño ensemble at Sam Houston High School in Houston ISD.
Yeah.
Roma ISD consistently has a conjunto program where it's isolated with an accordion class. And again, it reflects the music of the community. Right. But here's the thing. It's if I offer that, it's going to take away from the big three, the band, orchestra, and the choir.
Yeah.
You know, and it's not. And so I really want folks to understand that traditionally we serve maybe 20% of our school population, especially in larger schools. There's still 80% that we're not serving.
Yeah.
You know, and if they were in some type of arts program in the middle school and they didn't get it to high school, then maybe they didn't want to do that.
Right.
Or maybe let's make this a hook or a standalone. And then, because you and I can remember those times, man. You can't be my jazz band unless you're in the marching band or the concert band. And I'm guilty of that. I can sit here and admit that. That's kind of the practice that I took, because I thought if I don't do that, then I'll have nobody in marching band. Right. And I'll have nobody in concert band. But now I might be willing to say, you know what, let me expand this.
Yeah.
What if I allow myself, this young man, this young lady, this student that wants to come to me and says, I only play bass guitar and I don't want to do front ensemble. I want to be in the jazz band, or I want to be in the conjunto, or I want to be in the cover band.
Or what does it look like for us to say both and? What if that kid says, I only play bass guitar, Mr. Jimenez, I don't want to do that front ensemble? How do we engage our planning? We got all these marching show planning groups. How do we engage and say, okay, let's do a show where this bass player that's doing the front ensemble is not doing it and playing just root things. He actually has a solo. He's actually playing. And now when we present this to him, like, he can see it's both and. It's like I keep up with the Atlanta Drum Academy. It's this, group out in Atlanta where they teach all of these great percussionists. They've been on America's Got Talent, but they put a clip up on Instagram where two of their drummers, one kid that played quints and another young snare drummer, were just rocking out at a church. One was on organ, the other was on drums. And the leader of the Atlanta Drum Academy was like, here are two of our students showing us what they do outside of this. They just jamming. They know a song. Both and.
This and.
They didn't have to give up the drumming. They didn't have to give up their church drawing in. Yep. And I think in this era of music education, us educators, we have to be willing to say, it's both and.
I think we need to bring everybody to the table. Yeah. As soon as you said that, it's like, it can't start with just the teachers, because they're quickly going to say, well, I was never exposed or taught how to do this in undergrad.
Right.
And it's like, okay, but you have the tools and resources to figure it out. And if you don't, go find them.
Right.
You know what I mean? The same way that we put these pressures on our students.
Yeah.
Why won't you take on that charge? Because I kind of keep up with all the groups on Facebook, and I see all the questions, and it's consistently kind of every year, hey, I didn't get exposed to this genre, this ensemble, this way of music making in undergrad or in my entire life. Where do I start? It's the first question, but you know how to, whether it's ear training or notation.
Yeah, you know how to do that.
Like, make an effort.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, jump in.
Yes.
Now, again, we might be fearful of doing that.
Right.
Because of the practices that we've had. It's, I remember getting asked a colleague, just like, what are your, just informal music? What experience have you had just playing by ear? And they're like, I don't think I ever have. And I'm like, what? So I ask instrumental teachers all the time, like, okay, your program did this, but can a student in your third, fourth band get in front of a MIDI file and play a melody that everyone knows, like Happy Birthday,
right,
and play it on the spot?
Right.
Oh, and it's like that, because that's one of the practices that I do in improvisation. It's like, okay, you're on concert F, play Happy Birthday. Like, huh? And people crash and burn. And I tell them, I'm like, hey, great. Some of you got it out the first time. Some of you stumbled a little bit. Some of you couldn't get past the second pitch.
Right.
Even though that was the wrong pitch, because we've heard it this entire time. Just try to figure it out.
Yeah.
And so, well, guess what? We don't have enough of those opportunities in school music, especially here in our state. Like, shout out to Texas, but we do so many great things, but then we prohibit other things from happening.
We have a problem with control, right? We have a problem with control, and I mean it in a sense of we are dictating a child's musical growth and development by putting them in a box that music has never come to us in. Right? Like your introduction to music wasn't in this box
No,
that
it was
said,
not.
"Hey, this is a 1 to 5 chord." Your ears were entertained with this smorgasbord of just sounds, you know. And from there, you went in and said, "I like this sound. I kind of like this sound, but I don't really understand it. But I like this. Okay. Oh, now that I understand it, let me go back and get that." And I think what we've done, because control allows us to stay in our comfort zones, right?
Yeah.
Like there was a level of uncomfortability that I had to take going into when we started digging deeper into the Latin jazz bag. Now, do I know Latin music? Do I know a lot of those rhythms by ear? Yeah. But you were like, "Hey, Jay, I need you to go listen to this 2-3 pattern on the timbali. You know, I need you to go and listen to these conga patterns." That takes me, I can't control that anymore. I'm back in a child's place of now experimenting and learning. And control says, I want you to learn a certain way. When we take the control off and we say, let me control how much so I don't overwhelm you. That's where we need to control, right? But to say, no, we can't do that. No, you need to know, European, Western, and it's not a knock to this. Please don't hear us say that.
Yeah.
But for many of us, my journey into music was not through this narrow road.
It's not. And that we're getting more and more students in our classrooms that are of mixed race, mixed, bicultural, tricultural.
Yeah.
And I might release this video, man. My kiddos kind of lip singing Shell Shocked from the Ninja Turtles movie, even though it's a 3-6 Mafia song, you know what I mean? They're saying
they don't know
every word for word. But then I got a video of AJ with his hat backwards, lip singing Bad Bunny on Grupo Frontera. And I'm just like, who are these kids, Right. Because it's exactly what you said. They're going to absorb what they're listening to.
Yeah.
When I play El Flaco, that used to be on El Banda Recoditos, that Hasta la Miel Amarga, and he hears me sing it, and he's singing it.
Right.
Doesn't say the right words, because he doesn't know the entirety, but he's hearing the pitches. That I just got this comment just to say, like, AJ sings really good. Like, and I'm like, I've just been exposing them to music like crazy, and we're including ourselves in that. We need to be more open of that.
Right.
Some of our colleagues, we can get some data set points where like our chorus friends, our choir friends are doing things, are more representative of the students that we serve.
Right.
And their programming is more inclusive and diverse than the band world.
Yeah.
But then some have said the marching band world is a little bit more progressive in the way we do things, because it's innovative arrangements. It's every year we're bringing out something new. Where the orchestra world might be saying, no, we do the classics,
have to play these pieces,
and we do these things. And so the minutes that the word pop gets thrown in, it's not real music. It's not legit music.
Right.
And I've been guilty of saying that.
For sure.
It's like, I program real music.
But you were saying that because you were a part of another conversation.
And somebody told me that. Yes. I wanted to be a part of that. Like,
exactly.
I do that thing too.
I'm affirmed if I say these standards.
Yep. So shout out to Dr. Corey Mills that checked me on that.
Shout out to Dr. Mills.
When he was like, what is real music, Eric? What is legit music?
Right.
And I was like, just,
the PML list.
It's a PML, and whoever's played it the most, the prescribed music list here in Texas that we have to pick our pieces off of. But man, I am excited because at the end of the day, you and I jumped in this again with the intent to serve.
Yeah.
With the intent to amplify, with the intent to bring people to the table that traditionally had never seen this.
Right.
And I don't ever want to lose that.
Yeah.
I don't want to lose the humility that we have. I've told you this, that even if I go to some really nice dinners, I still look at the cheapest thing on the menu, even though I may not be paying for it.
Right.
These moments of humility that have kind of transpired for me in these past 4 years, I don't want to lose that.
Yeah.
I don't want to lose grasp of that, of that first year teacher that has been listening to us for the past 4 years since their first year in undergrad. Or the folks that trusted us enough that in the first 10 episodes, they jumped on as guests, knowing that what we had to do and what to get to say. So that for me, man, I know I'm in gratitude to you because of everything we've gone through.
Sure.
We've worked together.
Yeah.
We've served together. We go present together. We live lives together,
sure.
And I know I give you a lot of crap in a good way.
Of course.
It's
part of our relationship.
But man, I straight up want to just wrap it up by bringing back to the forefront that I'm in gratitude, man, for everyone. If you've given us a chance, If you've listened to one episode or 2 or 3,
we appreciate it.
If you listen to half of an episode,
right.
all of those moments of like, let's keep going. Why not? And I'm really excited for the next year, for the next 4 years, for the next 8, 10.
Yeah.
And this moment of just like being able to sit in front of a fire with you.
Fire. Now, we can't promise you everything.
But man, I wanted to get your final thoughts, man.
Man, I want to end it the same way we started. Thank you, man. Thank you. Just first off, people, I say this all the time, but where we are right now is a lot of what you saw in me and pushing me and pouring into me. And this is 100th episode of this, but this is a lifetime of just our partnership. Yeah. So being able to do this and be able to do it consistently and effectively, I'm just excited. I don't know what's going to happen next, but I know it's going to be great. I know it's going to be amazing. And I'm excited about the new teachers, new spaces, new conventions, new places that we'll be able to go into and just talk shop, talk life. We don't have, we don't have periodicals that have been published. We don't have any educational pieces, but what we do have is just honest conversation about what we've done, who we are, and where we're trying to go. So, yeah.
This has been another production of The Score. Connect with us on social media at Pod The Score. Send us an email, podthescore@gmail.com, or visit our website, revivalmusicproject.org. If you've enjoyed this episode, do us a huge favor. Rate and review us. This will help us reach even more listeners. Intro music by Justin McLean. The rotation and outro music by Ben Borges. And as always, let's continue to impact these lives through the vehicle of music.